Think blue sky scenario, set aside all your limiting beliefs, and ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? You will fail, I can guarantee, if you're going 0 to 100. This quote actually changed my life. I believe that you can achieve whatever you set your mind to. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Always Active podcast, the show that empowers you to lead an active lifestyle. I'm your host Katie, and in this episode I'll be talking all about how to set your health and fitness goals, including an intro to goal setting, a step-by-step goal setting process, and essential goal setting tips. We all have goals, and setting goals and having dreams is something that drives and motivates us, and it's very important for our success in life. So I figured it was very important to share this kind of episode, especially in the context of setting health and fitness goals. I've been teasing this episode for a while, kind of dropping hints here and there that I would be creating it eventually, but I decided that now would be a great time to share it because it is the beginning of July at the time of recording, which means it's halfway through the year, and I know it's quite popular for many people to do a mid-year reset around this time. So that's why I'm sharing this goal setting advice now. If you didn't set 2024 goals, now is a great time to set goals. And if you did set goals at the beginning of the year, you can totally revisit them now. And this is actually what I've been doing over the past week, is revisiting the goals that I set at the beginning of the year. Remember, you can refer back to this episode as an ongoing resource whenever you want to set goals at some point in the future. There really is nothing magical about having New Year's resolutions or checking in at the middle of the year. It's the process and taking action that matter, not the start date. Also, if you are interested in doing a full-on mid-year check-in, be sure to check out the video on my YouTube channel that I shared a couple years back explaining that process. This episode in particular will be a deep dive into goal setting. I'm going to focus on health and fitness examples specifically, but remember that the process and the principles that I'm sharing can really be applied to setting goals in any areas of your life. Also, I've created a goal setting worksheet, so check that out. It's linked in the show notes, and that is going to be super helpful for you to follow along with this episode and to set your goals after listening. So without further ado, let's get psyched to move. So to start off, what is goal setting? I looked up a bunch of definitions, and I think it's best summarized as the process of identifying the outcomes you want to accomplish in life. Simple as that. And goal setting is very important because it's something that motivates us, it promotes our personal growth, it helps us to identify our personal vision and achieve our dream life. It also builds our self-esteem because we feel fulfilled by accomplishing our goals. It provides us with direction, and it also allows us to track our progress and celebrate when we accomplish our goals. Another important reason for goal setting is to bridge the intention behavior gap. This is something I mentioned a couple episodes back in episode 9. And what this means is that we often fail to engage in our desired behaviors, but self-regulatory strategies like goal setting can help us to bridge this gap between things that we want to do and things that we actually do. If we set goals, we will be more likely to actually achieve our intentions. Now, a few different characteristics of goals. We have short-term goals and long-term goals. So smaller goals will usually have a shorter timeline, whereas bigger goals will usually have a longer timeline. We can also break these down into daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly goals. And these are all important and they complement one another. And if you're working towards small goals, that can actually help you to achieve your bigger goals. So for example, let's say a long-term goal that you have is to run a 10K race in the fall. So that's several months away. We can think of the short-term goal that can help us to achieve that long-term goal would be to train for the race by running 3 times per week. Another way we can categorize our goals are they behavior-based goals or outcome-based goals? So these are the two main types of categories that I like to focus on. Behavior-based goals refer to goals where you're regularly practicing habits that are in your control. And these are small things that you can commit to and check off your to-do list on a regular basis, which can help you to achieve your desired outcomes. So for example, a behavior-based goal would be to attend 1 yoga class per week, or to practice pull-ups once per week. Now, on the flip side, outcome-based goals are more bigger picture goals that are focused on results. And these can be motivating, but sometimes they can be out of our control or determined by external factors. Now, we absolutely can have these outcome-based goals, but it's often best to establish some behavior goals in order to help to achieve your desired outcome. So think of something smaller that you can consistently do. So for example, an outcome-based goal would be learning how to do the splits or gaining 5 pounds of muscle. Those are great goals that you can work toward, but they aren't something small that you can check off your list on a daily basis. So it's good to have a mix of both behavior and outcome-based goals to help you be well-rounded when setting goals. So now I'm going to dive into the process for setting goals that I like to follow. But before sharing the process, I want to preface this by saying that you should set aside some focused time in order to complete this goal setting process. So mark it in your calendar, schedule a couple hours or maybe even multiple days, especially if this is your first time setting goals, to set aside this time that you're focusing on setting your goals. Now, it may seem like a big commitment upfront to spend a couple hours doing this, but it's very important to undertake this process to get clarity on what's important to you, and it's important to set goals, so it's worth your time, and this is setting a foundation for success. The first step in this process is to reflect on your priorities. We need to clarify our priorities before setting our specific goals, so make sure that you don't skip this step. It's very important. We're going to spend some time reflecting on what's most important to us. Another way to put this would be to find your why or find your motivation, which is something that I mentioned back in episode 5 when I was talking about the benefits of physical activity and finding your why for why you're exercising. Remember that we need to be motivated in order to achieve our goals, and we need to do things for the right reasons because we will inevitably face challenges. So if we have a strong why or a strong motivation, this is going to help us when we're struggling to stay consistent. Having a strong why also provides clarity when goal setting, and it can inspire you and give you a sense of purpose. You may remember a while back I mentioned the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic goals. So intrinsic goals meaning things that are personally meaningful to you and genuinely fulfilling versus extrinsic goals that are more driven by external forces and are less meaningful. You want to make sure that you're prioritizing intrinsically motivated goals because that is going to help you to be more motivated. So I'm going to give an example of a time when I had a weak why and failed to accomplish my goal versus a time when I had a strong why and actually accomplished my goal. So back when I was in high school, I had a goal that I wanted to be shredded for the summer and have six-pack abs. And my why was because I wanted to receive external validation from other people and achieve an appearance that was promoted on social media. Not a very strong why if you ask me. That's why I didn't achieve that goal. Now, on the contrary, when my goal was to complete Natasha Ocean's cut and build training programs from start to finish, which, as you know, is a goal that I actually completed, my why behind this was to prove that I'm capable of following through on a commitment to myself, getting stronger and increasing my fitness, and I enjoyed the athletic training that was included in these programs. So because I had a strong why this time around, I was actually able to achieve my goal. And I'm sure you can think of examples in your own life when you had a goal, but you didn't have a very strong reason for it, and that's why you didn't achieve it. And vice versa, when you had a strong motivation and you actually ended up accomplishing your goal. So that's why it's important that we reflect on our priorities before setting our goals. So we understand why it's important to reflect on our priorities. Now, how are we going to do this? There are a couple different ways. You can reflect independently. Maybe you can do this by reflecting in your journal. You could also reflect with someone else, whether it's a friend, a family member, a partner, your coach, or even a support group. But in this way, someone else can give you feedback, and this is actually what I've been doing lately. I used to set my goals independently, but I find that having support is helpful, especially at this stage when I'm reflecting on my priorities and brainstorming. I do the more independent work at a later stage when I'm focusing on really refining my goals and integrating systems to make my goals a reality. So through this reflection process, you can follow whatever approach works best for you. It doesn't have to be super structured, but if you would like a template, remember to use that resource that I've linked in the show notes because that will walk you through some different reflection questions that you can answer. Some examples of questions to reflect on would be, what are your values? What do you want to accomplish in both the short and long term? What areas in your life would you like to improve on? And do your current goals align with your values? This exercise should help to give you some clarity and better understand the key areas of your life that you want to prioritize before setting your goals. The next step in this process is to brainstorm your goals. So now you've established your why and you've identified your priorities. Now use these priorities to start brainstorming your goals. So you're going to have a little bit of a brainstorming session where you think of your big picture goals. So you can be very ambitious here and get out of your comfort zone. Think blue sky scenario, set aside all your limiting beliefs, and ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? What does your dream life look like? And what does your dream health and fitness routine look like? As you're doing this, list out all your goals and write down everything that comes to mind without filter. You can write down goals for all different areas of your life, both in the short and long term. And after doing this, you'll have a big list of goals. They can be messy, they can be very vague at this point. The point is just to capture all of your ideas right now. And if you would like some specific ideas for health and fitness goals that you might want to strive to achieve, be sure to check out that worksheet. Now you have your list of goals. The next step is to create a vision board. A vision board is a compilation of different images and words that either represent your goals or things that are just intriguing to you. Maybe you don't know the meaning right now, but they kind of just speak to you and seem interesting. Those are things you can include on your vision board as well. And the purpose of having a vision board is to visualize your goals, keep you motivated, and help you set ambitious goals. You can create a vision board by compiling different images. You can find these online. I like to use Pinterest as a really great source of images. And if you want your board to be really aesthetic, you can type whatever your goal is and then the word aesthetic after it, and it'll give you some cute images to include on your vision board. You can also look through magazines and you can use your own photos too. This is something I like to do. In this way, you're kind of being your own inspiration and acknowledging your past successes as you set your new goals. And then once you've compiled these images, you can arrange them on either a physical vision board or a digital vision board. And I like to do this using Canva. Once you've created your vision board, you can update it regularly by either replacing the images that no longer resonate with you, or you can even swap out images of your actual achievements. This is something I like to do, especially at the mid-year. I actually did this last week, and I went through the vision board that I created at the start of the year, and I replaced any images of things that I actually ended up achieving with images from my own camera roll. And that was a very nice boost of motivation at the middle of the year to remind me that I have been achieving my goals and I can continue to achieve the other goals that I've set for myself but haven't yet achieved. Now, once you've created this vision board, you want to make it visible. So put it somewhere where you'll see it every single day. For example, you can put it up on your wall if you've created a physical vision board, or you can put it as your phone background and desktop wallpaper, which is what I like to do. And in doing this, it is a daily reminder of your goals. This process of creating a vision board is something that I've been doing for the past 2 years now, and I've found it to be super inspiring and a very powerful tool to help me actually achieve my goals. And one of the best parts about this, like I kind of mentioned, is getting to see the images that I've placed on my vision board actually come to reality in my own camera roll. All right, so now you have reflected on your priorities, you have this big unfiltered list of goals, and you have your vision board created. The next step is to focus on clarifying your goals. So I've come up with 12 tips. These are things that I like to use when setting my goals to help create very effective goals. And for each of these 12 tips, I'll give you an example of what this would look like. So tip number 1 is to only focus on a few goals at a time. I think this is where a lot of people go wrong, especially when doing things like setting New Year's resolutions, and they create this massive list of goals like we already talked about, but then they make their goal to achieve all those goals at once. And I mean, obviously you're going to fail because it's impossible to do a complete overhaul of your life and integrate all these new habits at once. So instead, from this big list, just pick a couple of goals that you want to focus on at this point and only set a few goals at a time. So in this way, you're going to avoid overwhelming yourself because you will fail, I can guarantee, if you're going 0 to 100. So an example of this tip, rather than trying to tackle all my goals at once, instead, I pick 3 goals to focus on each month. So yes, I do my big brainstorming process at the beginning of the year, but then at the beginning of each month, I pick just 3 goals to focus on for that month. And in that way, I have a much clearer focus and I'm actually able to achieve things that I've set out for myself. Tip number 2 is to be specific. So you want to be clear about what you intend to accomplish and define your goal in simple terms. Make it easy to understand. Also give details, things like where, when, and how you will achieve your goal. So for example, rather than saying you want to exercise more, instead you can say you'll work out at the gym following a program on weekdays at 7 a.m. As you can see, much clearer and easier to follow. Tip number 3 is to set goals where you're able to measure your progress. Your goals should be trackable, and you should also specify how you'll plan to track your progress within your goal. And then make sure you actually review your progress regularly. So rather than the goal to just get stronger, instead you can say, I'll increase my squat by 50 pounds and track my progress in a note on my phone. Tip number 4 is to set achievable goals. So obviously you want to set goals that are challenging and ambitious and out of your comfort zone, but they also have to be realistic, something that you can actually achieve. So avoid setting extreme goals that you can't realistically achieve either now or maintain long term, but you can build progression in over time. So for example, rather than saying you want to run a half marathon in under 2 hours and you have no running experience, instead you can say, I'll train for a 5K this season, a 10K the following season, a half marathon next year, all for completion. And then the following year, I'll start training for speed so that I can get that sub 2 hour half marathon. As you can see, we can still work up to that big picture goal, but you're not setting a goal that is impossible for you to achieve in this very moment. Instead, you're building in that progression so that that unachievable goal right now will become achievable in the future. Now, related to this, tip number 5 is to break down your goals into smaller, more manageable steps. So think of the daily, weekly, and monthly goals that you can do in order to work up to your big goals in the future. And remember that small goals should not be avoided. Small goals are still very meaningful. So for example, rather than saying I want to work out 5 days per week when I currently work out 0 days per week, instead you can say I'll work out twice per week this month, 3 times per week next month, and 5 times per week by the end of the year. In this way, again, you're building in that progression and you've taken this big goal and broken it down into smaller steps you can actually achieve. Tip number 6 is to align your goals with your values. When setting your goals, remember about how you've reflected on your priorities and your big picture objectives that you brainstormed earlier, and then come back to your why when setting each goal. And a strategy you can use here is to ask yourself why several times to understand if a goal is truly meaningful to you. So for example, maybe your goal is to start exercising more regularly. Ask yourself, why do I want to start exercising regularly? Because my doctor told me to. Is that a strong why? Not really. So let's get a little bit deeper. Why did my doctor tell me to exercise regularly? Well, to improve your health. Is that a strong why? Yes, we're getting a little bit closer there. Next question, why is it important to improve my health? My answer, to improve my quality of life and be there for my loved ones. Bingo, that's your strong why. So when you're going through and setting your specific goals, make sure to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And then also make sure that your why is strong and it is aligned with your values. Tip number 7 is to establish a timeline. So you want to set a deadline for when you intend to accomplish your goal by. And this is motivating because it gives you a little bit more of a sense of urgency when trying to achieve your goal. So for example, rather than simply setting the goal to run 5K, instead you can say, I will complete the 5K race that I've registered for by the end of the month. And as a bonus there, you've put in a financial incentive by paying to register for a race, and that is further cementing the importance of that deadline. So accountability is key. Tip number 8 is to write down your goals, because this is going to enhance your commitment and make your goals feel more real. So rather than simply thinking of your goals, instead actually put pen to paper using a notebook or actually type them out using a computer program like Notion. Tip number 9 is to be flexible. Remember that life happens, so be prepared to adjust your goals as needed. This goes back to one of the movement mindsets that I shared a while back, which was when in doubt, pivot. If you face an obstacle that prevents you from achieving your goal, be ready to revisit your goal at your next goal check-in and adapt as needed. So for example, rather than simply quitting my gym goals altogether because I was following a program and I didn't like it, and so now what's the point of even working out at all? Instead, my new goal will be to sign up for a fitness competition so that I can work toward a new challenge. And yes, this is something I've done. I'll definitely chat about this more in a future episode. Tip number 10 is to establish accountability. There's that accountability piece again, super important. A way to do this is to set goals with other people and to schedule your goal check-ins in your calendar like it's a commitment that you cannot miss. So a personal example is rather than inconsistently setting goals by myself, which is what I used to do time and time again, instead, now I have a monthly Zoom session, which is scheduled in my calendar with my friends to review our past goals and set new ones together. This is such an important accountability mechanism that I really credit to many of my achievements over the past couple years. Tip number 11 is to reward yourself. So remember to celebrate your accomplishments. Really reinforce that you put in the work to achieve what you did. A way to do this is to specify a reward for yourself and then actually follow through on getting this reward for yourself when you achieve your goals. Rather than crossing off one goal and then just moving on to the next without acknowledging your success, instead you can specify your reward when setting your goal. So for example, when I complete my race, I will reward myself with a new pair of running shoes. And the last tip number 12, is to use strong action words when setting your goals. This makes the goals feel more serious and it's more motivating. And if you listen back, I've done this in all of the examples that I've given. So for example, rather than saying, I hope to make yoga a habit, instead you can say, I will complete 3 yoga classes per week. As you can see, that sounds much more serious, much more like it's something that I'm going to make happen, especially because I'm using the words I will, as if it's something that is going to happen regardless. There's no reason that this goal would not happen. All right, so those are all the goal setting tips I have. So I've given you this goal setting process and you've set your goals now. That's great. And you should celebrate the fact that you even took this first step to set your goals. This step is essential, but it's just the first step. And this doesn't actually work for getting things done. We need to use this goal setting process with caution because according to research, goal setting is a positive experience for us. Both from a psychological standpoint, goal setting feels like a goal that has been satisfied in itself, but it also causes physiological changes in our body, which trigger that we can relax, like we've accomplished a goal already, even though this is just the first step. So if there are these negative consequences to setting goals, then what's the solution? The solution is systems. I'm going to share a quote from author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, and that quote is, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." And when I read this book a couple years back, this quote actually changed my life. We need systems in place to actually achieve our goals because these systems are going to help us stay on track and make progress consistently. And these are the foundation for supporting our goals. It's necessary to create an action plan, track our progress, and update our systems using tools like calendars, to-do lists, our reminders, and Notion. These systems are the secret ingredients that will actually turn your goals into reality. Another thing we need to do in order to prevent the potentially negative consequences of goal setting is we need strategies to stay motivated and overcome challenges. So we need to think about the challenges that we might encounter and then design solutions in advance that we'll implement if and when we encounter these challenges to achieving our goals. Now, these topics of achieving your goals with systems, staying motivated, overcoming challenges, and tracking your progress, we'll have full episodes dedicated to them. I'm not going to touch on it today. The point in today's episode was just to talk about setting goals, but I really need to highlight this is just the beginning. There are other steps we need to take after setting goals to make our goals a reality. So stay tuned. These episodes will be coming. One episode that I can refer you to right now is How to Work Out with a Busy Schedule, which was episode 9. So check that one out because I share a lot of practical tips in that one for making time to work out and planning your workouts. Another final important point that I want to touch on is that I'm a huge fan of having these processes in place to help you set your goals. And the process that I shared today is what works for me. This is something that I've been refining ever since honestly elementary school. That's the first time I can remember setting goals. And the process that I used back then was very basic, not very effective. And so my goal setting strategies have become way more effective and I've been able to achieve more with time. So the reason I say this is you need to find what works for you, and you can use my goal setting process as a template, but take this and modify it so that it fits your unique needs. And you can incorporate whatever ideas I shared that resonate with you and then use any other strategies that are effective for you. Remember that goal setting is a skill. It's something that takes time to learn and will get better with practice. So embrace this process of getting better at goal setting as part of your personal growth journey. And also remember to give yourself grace. Having a healthy, active lifestyle is all about balance and trying your best when pursuing your goals. You will inevitably face challenges and fail to achieve your goals, but just because you fail to achieve your goals now doesn't mean you will never achieve them. So give yourself grace in times when you don't succeed. As long as you're persistent, as long as you're setting goals, and as long as you're taking action, I believe that you can achieve whatever you set your mind to. So building this idea of knowing yourself and realizing that goal setting is a nuanced process, today's Psych Spotlight will be sharing a recent paper in the field of exercise psychology that challenges best practices when it comes to setting goals. It is recommended that we should set performance-based goals. So these are goals with an aim to achieve a specific challenging outcome. An example of a performance-based goal would be to walk 10,000 steps a day. That's something that we hear all the time. But these specific challenging goals may not always be the best approach, and it could actually have negative psychological effects, especially for tasks that are new and tasks that are complex. And so this study recommended that we need to consider some other approaches to goal setting, which may be more effective. And these other approaches are learning goals and do your best goals. Learning goals refer to goals where we develop strategies to master a task. So using that 10,000 steps a day example again, an example of a learning-based goal would be to identify 3 strategies to increase your daily step count. So as you can see, we're still trying to achieve that same performance-based goal, but rather than focusing on that end goal, we're focusing on the actions or the strategies that we can use to work toward that goal. And I often like to use these learning goals to help me to achieve my performance goals personally. And then the other type of approach we can consider is a do your best goal. So these are goals that encourage you to do your best without the pressure of a specific outcome. So an example of this would be to get as many steps as you can. As you can see, this one is way more vague and it's actually not quite as effective as learning goals, but just to keep in mind, it is another strategy you can take if that is something that you feel would work best. Now, when considering all these different approaches, so the performance, learning, and do your best goals, we need to also consider the circumstances that we're facing. And we can set different types of goals depending on our circumstances. So an example of this would be people who are already active regularly and have an established fitness routine may do better to set these more challenging performance-based goals. Whereas if you're inactive, just getting into exercising, it may be better for you to set a learning-based or a do-your-best type goal. The point is, sometimes performance goals are better, sometimes learning goals are better, and sometimes do-your-best goals are better. So when setting goals for yourself, pick the strategy that works best for you in your specific context. And another key takeaway here would be to set a variety of performance, learning, and do your best goals depending on the different area of your life or the different specific goals that you're trying to achieve. So I have a special guest for the movement mindset segment of today's episode, and the special guest is John is back.
Hey.
John is making a brief appearance on the pod today. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. Everyone really liked the last episode with you in it, so you're going to be making some more appearances if you want.
Sounds good.
I figured it would be good to bring you on right now because the movement mindset for this week is about how we've gotten into pickleball recently. So how have you been liking your pickleball lifestyle?
Love it. I find it a lot easier than tennis to play and easier to have rallies and stuff. So yeah, just because you have a lot more control with your racket and the ball doesn't go as far. So, you know, it's a lot easier to just rally back and forth just because it's not coming in as quick.
With pickleball compared to tennis.
With pickleball, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's been way easier to pick up. I've kind of compared it to golf because, don't get me wrong, I still like golf and I would like to become a good golfer, and we'll keep going to the driving range to get practice. But I feel like that's something where I'll be a good golfer in like 5 years from now. Like, it's not a short-term thing. Versus pickleball, we were able to just like pick up, and it took us like 10 minutes to learn, and then we're good to go. I understand the hype now. Like, pickleball has really gained a lot of traction over the past couple of years. It's been something I've wanted to try, but I don't know, we just never really had the opportunity. But I feel like after that, how many times have we played now?
4. Yeah, we started playing it at your friend's cottage, and we've been hooked ever since. And we're 4-0.
We're 4-0, yeah. I'm not sure where that stat's coming from, but we're 4-0, just to set the record straight.
Haven't lost.
Yeah. How would you say being a pickleballer is going to change your life?
It gives me something easy to do on a random weeknight. It's pretty easy just to pick up and go.
Yeah, it's a nice hobby to have. And just like the active part is a byproduct. Like, it's not like we're going out to work out necessarily.
And it's free too. After you buy your set, like, you don't have to pay anything else after. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for introing the segment, and we'll get you back with a full-length episode.
Sounds good.
See you next time, John.
Thanks. See you next time.
Okay, it's just me again. Yeah, so John and I introed a little bit about how we've gotten into pickleball recently, and the movement mindset for this week is to be spontaneous. The reason being is because I've had times in my fitness journey where I've been pretty rigid with my routine, but over time, I'd say I've been pretty good at learning how to embrace spontaneity with exercise. And this pickleball experience is a really great example of that, because it has been something I've wanted to try, like I said, but we kind of just spontaneously played at our friend's cottage the other weekend, and then we kind of just spontaneously played 4 times again after that within 1 week. And it's been exciting to have this new hobby. And actually, another idea related to this, another spontaneous moment that happened was the second time we played, which John had mentioned, we played with his friends. It was a really last minute thing, and there was a split second where I almost declined the opportunity because I'm doing a 10,000 steps a day challenge right now. And that night I was behind on my 10,000 steps, and I was going to need to do my steps in the evening if I wanted to hit the goal. But here's the thing, life is so much more than a 30-day step challenge. Why would I refuse the invite and stay at home to walk on the treadmill for an hour if instead I can enjoy a nice summer evening with our friends, have some pickleball opponents to play against, and get some steps in the process? So the main takeaway from here is just to embrace spontaneity in your fitness routine, whether it's trying something new or spontaneously saying yes to plans to work out. You never know when you'll find a new activity you love, and fitness is supposed to add to your life. So don't prioritize having a rigid fitness routine at the expense of enjoying movement, because that's the most important part, is to enjoy it. All right, wrapping things up with our community responses, I asked you a bunch of questions on Instagram at all.ways.active, questions about goal setting. And the first question was, how often do you set health and fitness goals? 67% of you said every few months, 17% said every year, 17% said rarely or never, and none of you said every month. I would say I fall into this every few months group. And I personally find that this is a good frequency. As much as my friends and I have our monthly check-ins, which is helpful, I only really do like a serious deep dive every few months, because every month is a bit too frequent to do more intense goal setting. So if you never set goals, I would encourage you to consider setting them after listening to this episode. And if you only set goals once a year, I would encourage you to consider doing more regular check-ins. The next question, how confident do you feel in your ability to set goals? The average response was right in the middle on the scale, ranging from not confident to very confident. We had a couple votes at the high end, a couple votes at the low end, and a couple votes right in the middle. So I hope after listening to this episode, you feel more confident about learning this goal setting process, as well as the tips that I shared. The next question was, do you set your goals with others? 50% of you said yes with a friend or loved one. 33% said no, I set goals independently. And 17% said yes with a coach or a mentor. and none of you said with a support group. It's awesome that many of you have accountability buddies of some sort, and so do I. Like I said, that's what's been really motivating to me, is having these accountability buddies with my monthly goal check-ins and just chatting about my goals. Setting goals independently is also great as long as you're able to hold yourself accountable, of course. Personally, I found it tough to hold myself accountable, so setting my goals with others has been a really great strategy. And the last question, I asked, what are your current health and fitness goals? One of my friends said to remain undefeated in pickleball, so love that goal. And then the other question was, what challenges do you face when setting goals? Got a couple great responses here, including consistency as a challenge, holding myself accountable, setting smaller goals instead of big ones, and then also having an all or nothing mentality as a challenge. And they commented that you're going to have bad days, which is an important thing to consider. Yes, you're going to have bad days, but it doesn't mean one bad day is going to totally throw you off track and ruin your progress toward your goals. So I really feel you on all of these challenges that you've shared. Setting goals is not easy and you will face challenges, but if you apply the tips that I shared today, hopefully that can help you with setting your goals. So that's it. That wraps up today's episode. Now that you've learned this process and these tips, it's time to take action. You can start setting, working toward, and achieving your goals today, no matter what time of year it is when you're listening. You can also come back to this episode whenever you're ready to set new goals. And also remember to check out that resource that I mentioned. It is linked in the show notes, and that's going to help you with the goal setting process. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here for 11 episodes. Thank you for all your support on the podcast and on Instagram, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Always Active podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, and I would be grateful if you could please leave a review. Also, be sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at all.ways.active so that your responses can be featured in future episodes. See you next time.